overseas is our top priority. All remaining U.S. direct hire embassy personnel, including the ambassador, have relocated to Hamid Karzai International Airport, where they are secure. The Department of Defense is working to restore a safe and secure environment so that military and commercial flights can resume. Now, of course, the situation is evolving quickly, and we will communicate information to U.S. citizens as rapidly as possible. In the meantime, we are asking U.S. citizens to shelter and not to travel to the airport until they hear otherwise from the Department of State. We also continue to pursue all options to relocate interested and qualified Afghan SIV applicants and their immediate families, as well as other vulnerable Afghans. We remain closely coordinated with our international partners on the ground and around the globe. We've been engaging tirelessly with our partners in the international community. You may have seen last night, the United States organized a joint statement with 98 signatories calling on all parties to respect and facilitate the safe and orderly departure of foreign nationals and Afghans who wish to leave the country. Today, Secretary Blinken spoke with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, PRC State Counselor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, Pakistan Foreign Minister Qureshi, UK Foreign Secretary Raab, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg, Turkish Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, and EU High Representative Josep Borrell. Yesterday, he spoke with Australian Foreign Minister Payne, French Foreign Minister Le Drian, German Foreign Minister Maas, and Norwegian Foreign Minister Søreide. Other senior officials have been making calls to their counterparts as well around the clock. Additionally, the UN Security Council issued a joint press statement earlier today calling for a new government that is united, inclusive, and representative, including with the full and meaningful participation of women. The Council spoke with one voice to underscore that Afghanistan must abide by its international obligations, including to international humanitarian law, and ensure the safety and security of all Afghans and international citizens. The situation will continue to remain fluid in the coming hours and likely in the coming days. Nevertheless, we are operating on multiple fronts and around the clock to protect our people, those who have worked side by side with the United States over the years, and other vulnerable Afghans. Now, before I take your questions, I do want to speak to one additional issue that is of great importance to us, and that is the U.S. response to the earthquake in Haiti. The United States is closely monitoring the situation following a magnitude 7.2 earthquake that struck the southwestern part of the country on August 14th. We offer our deepest condolences to all who suffered the loss of loved ones or saw their homes or businesses destroyed. We are in close contact with Haitian authorities to respond to the earthquake and any requests for assistance. On Saturday, USAID deployed a Disaster Assistance Response Team, or a DART, to lead the U.S. government's humanitarian response efforts. And yesterday, at the request of the government of Haiti, USAID deployed members of Fairfax County Fire Department's Urban Search and Rescue, USAR, a team to join the DART. So far, the DART conducted an aerial assessment and is continuing to assess the damage. They will also identify priority needs and coordinate with the government of Haiti and humanitarian partners. U.S. Coast Guard air crews are transporting medical personnel and supplies from Port-au-Prince to Jérémie and Le Cay, and are evacuating injured citizens to higher level of care facilities in Port-au-Prince. At the request of USAID, Southcom is sending 2 UH-60 and 2 CH-47 helicopters from Joint Task Force Bravo to provide critical airlift support to ongoing relief efforts. We are also closely tracking Tropical Storm Grace, which is expected to reach Haiti today, potentially exposing people to further devastation. The United States remains a close and enduring friend to the people of Haiti, and we will continue to provide assistance in the aftermath of this tragedy. We are committed to helping the Haitian people build a better future. With that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Thanks, Ned. Can I ask 2 real quick logistical ones, and I really hope they'll be real quick. One, other than the threat, I guess you could call it, to respond militarily if the Taliban interfere or get in the way of any of the evacuation efforts, is there any kind of agreement that's been reached, or any kind of an arrangement that has been reached with them about the presence of the U.S. military at the airport, or are they just basically there at kind of the pleasure of the Taliban, as it were, until they decide that they've had enough and they start, I don't know if they will or not, but whether they start to resist the fact that the airport is not under their control.
Well, let me take the opportunity to offer a bit of context on our diplomatic efforts over the past 72 or so hours. Ambassador Khalilzad and his team remained in Doha. They still remain in Doha, following consultations that we talked about last week with a number of countries from the region, the UN, and countries much farther afield. They continued, and they still continue, to engage with the Taliban. They continue to engage with the Islamic Republic, that is to say, the government of Afghanistan representatives. When it became clear that the government of Afghanistan was on the verge of collapse, that President Ghani had fled, and that the Taliban were encroaching on Kabul, the focus, of course, changed. It shifted from supporting peace negotiations along with the international community to working assiduously and urgently to do all we can with the international community on an urgent basis to avert violence, to attempt to maintain order in Kabul, and very, very importantly, to guarantee that the Taliban would not seek to threaten our people or our operations. It was a very fluid situation. The situation changed markedly when President Ghani left the country and as the Taliban continued to encroach on Kabul. We do continue to engage with Taliban representatives in Doha from the State Department team. The U.S. military has spoken to engagement with the Taliban on the ground in Kabul. And again, we are working on a couple different fronts. First and foremost, to seek to preserve calm in Kabul, to maintain a semblance of security, and very importantly, to underscore that any effort, any attempt to target, to threaten, to intimidate our personnel or our operations would be met with a swift and decisive response.
Other than that, there's no agreement with the Taliban for the U.S. military to run the airport, to run the airspace, to be in control. And if there is an agreement, how long does that agreement last?
We have engaged with the Taliban. We have had discussions. I would say that some of those discussions have been constructive, but again, when it comes to the Taliban, we are going to look for their actions rather than listen to their words.
And then secondly, the logistical thing is on the embassy compound itself, which is now abandoned. Do you have you taken any measures to secure that place, or are you just basically letting? Is there a protecting power? Is it open area that anyone can get into now if they can get over the fence? Are you prepared to leave it just sit there?
Well, as you know, Matt, we confirmed last night that as of late night Eastern, all of our civilian personnel located at the embassy, chief of mission, those operating under chief of mission authority, had safely relocated from the embassy compound to Hamid Karzai International Airport. As you also know, the embassy is in an area that has been heavily fortified. So we do not have an American presence on the ground.
Is there any presence?
We do not have an American presence on the ground at the embassy. Our ambassador is and has been at the embassy at the compound, the Hamid Karzai International Airport, since late last night, our time, and that remains the case.
Yeah, but there isn't any protecting power. There's nobody there. It's wide open for anyone who wants to go in there.
As you know,
regardless of whether it's in a built-up barricaded area or not, you basically just took off and left it empty.
As you know, it is a heavily fortified area.
My last one is that in the Doha agreement, which
and Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. There may be other sites identified if services are needed, additional capacity is needed. At this point, we're looking to establish 22,000 spaces. We can expand if we need to. As with the operation we've been supporting at Fort Lee, persons that come to these locations will have been pre-screened by the Department of Homeland Security to enter on condition of full immigration processing once they arrive. With this operation underway, but given the urgency of the situation in Kabul, our focus has shifted to supporting movement of our embassy staff, American citizens, allies, and other partners out of Kabul. Starting on August 14th, we began movement of these persons on Department of Defense aircraft, providing them transportation that had flown into Kabul, delivering our troops and hauling cargo. This is an important point. The numbers to date are in the hundreds. We certainly have a much greater requirement. We are still in the process of bringing in forces. These aircraft, as space is available on the outbound, have been taking passengers. And of course, this has been somewhat disrupted in the last 24 hours. But nonetheless, we have transported several hundred to countries in the region and aligned them, again, with our State Department and DHS colleagues for their onward transportation. We anticipate picking up the pace, provided we can stabilize conditions at Kabul as described by the General. Our military team in Kabul is working side by side with the ambassador and his staff to coordinate future airlift operations in the coming days. The Department of State and Department of Homeland Security will facilitate initial processing at overseas transit points and prepare for onward movement for all of those transported by the Department of Defense. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get to questions. Bob, want to go?
Thanks. A question for General Taylor, if I may. General, has the U.S. military conducted any airstrikes today or in the last 24 hours or so? And also, there have been some reports of Afghan pilots flying their aircraft into other countries. Is that happening? And is the U.S. taking any other sort of steps to prevent aircraft or other military equipment from falling into the hands of the Taliban?
Yeah. First, on the first question on the strikes. No strikes have been conducted in the last 24 hours, but the commander on the ground continues to maintain that capability if required to do so. The commander has the assets that are available there at HKI and in support from other areas of the region. I don't have information on your second part of the question, but we'll get back to that.
So there's no U.S. actions being taken to prevent equipment from falling into the hands of the Taliban by destroying it or anything else?
I don't have that answer to that question.
You don't have the answer.
Jen?
General Taylor, was this a failure of intelligence or planning that led to the scenes we saw at the airport today?
When the scenes at the airport of everybody coming
that
on
caused it to be shut down?
Yeah, what we know had happened at the airport was that there were a lot of Afghans that were trying to reported get out of the country. So I don't think that was a lack of planning. As we look at the coordination with those that were responsible for securing that, we'll look at our mission, though, as I talked earlier, is now that the airfield's open, is to make sure that it remains open. So like, as I said, we can continue expediting flights in and outbound.
But the quick fall of Kabul, was that a failure of intelligence?
I can't answer that.
And Mr. Reed, you're in charge of the SIVs. There are women who fought for the special forces. There are reports that the Taliban are now knocking on doors, going into the homes of those who served in the military. What are you doing to protect them, to get them out? Are you in touch with the Taliban, and do you have assurances that they'll be safe?
We recognize that beyond the SIVs, there's additional Afghans at risk, and they are included within the group of people that, in time, as we get through the Americans and the immediate priority, that we have plans in place to support lifting them, transporting them out of the country on the defense side. Again, it would be Department of State, Homeland Security, questions about immigration processing. We recognize the risk that they face, and we're doing everything we can to get this operation underway at scale so we can get through as many as possible under these very difficult conditions.
But are you communicating with the Taliban? Do you have a line of communication?
I'm personally not communicating with the Taliban, but I would imagine there is communications within the diplomatic channels.
As we said earlier, General McKenzie did meet in Doha with Taliban leaders. I'm not going to detail that conversation, as I said earlier, but the message was very clearly put to the Taliban that these operations and our people were not to be attacked, or there would be a response. And as you and I speak, there has been no attack on our operation or on our people at the airport. To your other question, I would, again, like to just fill out the mission that the military has right now is to secure the airport, to keep operations going, and to help make sure that we can safeguard the movement of personnel, people, from Kabul to onward destinations. That's the focus right now. The State Department has methods of their own to reach out to people, to communicate with them about the process of getting into the queue. And I would let the State Department speak to that. But it's, as I said before, the military mission is very narrowly focused around the airport, making sure we can secure operations there. Barb?
I'd like to follow up with you or the general, but let me start with you, please, at the mic, if I may. To follow up on the previous question, the U.S. military, the Department of Defense, always, for decades, says we plan for everything. Clearly, whatever you planned for did not get planned for at the airport. We've now seen a C-17 with more than 600 people sitting on the floor, with the pilot making the decision that he would fly them out anyhow, even though that's an extraordinary number of people. We've seen, the world has seen all the scenes at the airport. So my two questions are, what failed in your planning? Because you didn't plan for this. You would not have planned to fly in such dangerous circumstances. And how do you determine where the responsibility lies for this failure?
Well, first of all, Barbara, I would take issue with your designation of this operation at the airport as a failure. But let's get back to that in a second. Let's get back to that in a second. Yes, we do plan for all manner of contingencies. This is a planning organization. And we do that specifically to try to mitigate risk and to try to be ready for unforeseen circumstances. But it's not a perfect process. Plans are not always perfectly predictive, and as is a well-known military maxim, that plans don't often survive first contact, and you have to adjust in real time. And I think when you look at the images out of Kabul, that would have been difficult for anybody to predict. Yes, we did plan on non-combatant evacuation operations as far back as May. There were drills being done here at the Pentagon to walk through what different non-combatant evacuation operations might look like. There was another one recently done just 2 weeks ago, a tabletop exercise to, again, examine what a non-combatant evacuation would look like out of the Hamid Karzai International Airport. I mean, specifically at the airport. And we think that those exercises did prepare us in terms of having the resources forward, the Secretary forward deployed troops, including Marines, off of their ship and into Kuwait so that they could be more readily available, as well as other forces in the region. So a lot of what you're seeing transpire, the reason we can be so quick with upwards of 6,000 troops is because we anticipated the possible need to do this. Now, could we have predicted every single scenario and every single breach around the perimeter of the airport with only a couple of thousand troops on the ground? Absolutely. You know, there are changes that happen. So plans are terrific and we take them seriously, but they are not and never have been perfectly predictive.
When you practice this, was one of the scenarios a complete Taliban takeover of the capital?
There was certainly, as you do exercises, I don't want to go into too much detail here on these, but it would certainly be wrong to conclude that the United States military did not view as a distinct possibility that the Taliban could overrun the country and including Kabul. Now, as we've talked about here many times, it happened very fast. And one of the things that we couldn't anticipate and didn't anticipate was the degree to which Afghan forces capitulated, sometimes without a fight.
But the president said that he did not see that happening. Did you tell the president that you thought it was a possibility the country would be overrun?
We won't speak to advice and counsel that our leaders here in the Pentagon give to the president. What I can tell you is that in the planning that we've done and in the exercises and drills we certainly ran them against the possibility that the Taliban would make significant gains throughout the country. Yes, absolutely. Carla.
Speaking of the images we've been seeing at the airport, a U.S. official has told VOA that there's an investigation currently underway about multiple civilian deaths when a C-17 took off from the airport. What more can you tell us about that investigation, and can you confirm the number of
I
deaths?
can't confirm that reporting, Carla. So, I mean, you're getting information that I don't have, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least that commanders would be taking a look at what happened this morning with respect to the C-17, and I won't get ahead of that process. There will be, you can expect that we will take a look at this to see what happened and what we can learn from it in the future. That is absolutely consistent, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was, in fact, a formal investigation, but I just can't confirm that right now.
Looking at the images, was the U.S. too late to bring in the number of troops that it brought in? Did the decision come too late?
We flowed these forces in as fast as we possibly could, and it was aided, in fact, by the pre-positioning that was done in previous weeks. I mean, you all reported yourselves about the Iwo Jima, the Navy ship from which these Marines were based, being extended for a couple of weeks by Secretary Austin. That was a decision he made several weeks ago because it was all part of the contingency planning for the need to maybe do some evacuations. To make that even faster, we moved those Marines ashore, and we saw the benefit now. Those Marines were the first ones on scene. So it was something that we absolutely had thought about.
And one last question, and this can be for you or the general. You've spoke from the podium over the last several days many times saying that the Afghan Air Force was conducting more airstrikes against the Taliban than the U.S. was. My question is, why was that? Why didn't the U.S. conduct more strikes against the Taliban in these final days?
Yeah, Carla, I think, Monday morning quarterback in here now, I mean, it isn't, I don't think, a helpful exercise. But as we said from a while ago, that as our resources and capabilities in the region dwindled because of the drawdown, and we were ordered to draw down by the end of August. And we were nothing but honest about the speed with which we had to do that, because speed is safety. We wanted to make sure we did this quickly. And a drawdown means a drawdown. And it's not just about boots on the ground. The drawdown is about capabilities and resources in the region as we wrapped up our advise and assist and combat missions in Afghanistan, which meant we had fewer airplanes, fewer strike capabilities in the region as we continued to draw down. And again, we were very transparent about the fact that we would conduct airstrikes in support of the Afghans where and when feasible, fully cognizant of the fact that it wasn't always going to be feasible on every day and in every place. But the Afghan Air Force is indigenous, and they are in the country, and they did maintain their presence. And there were days where they flew easily twice as many strikes as we did, and they were able to often get on scene quicker because they were already there and because they had tangible connections to their troops in the field. It also is a healthy reminder, something that I think we forget, that in the last year and a half, Afghans were in the lead of almost all, literally all, but just about almost all of their operations on the ground. I mean, the advise and assist mission was still there, but they were very much in the lead of their own operations and coordinating with their Air Force. Sylvie.
I have a question for Mr. Reid.
Okay.
You said earlier that your crisis action group for Afghanistan was set up in early July.
That's right.
The decision of President Biden to end the war was taken in mid-April. Why did it take so long to create a group to take care of your Afghan allies?
The Department of Defense enters into this in support of the State Department. And the State Department has, for many years, as you know, executed the SIV program. The addition of the U.S. military support to that program was new, and it was generated by guidance to try to accelerate and help the process due to the time delays inherent within getting them through. So we were asked by the State Department to provide support to their operation. That's not a suggestion that is when SIVs became a priority for the government. That has been for many years. It was just the contributions that the Defense Department could make using our installations in the United States as an example, where we could do this in a very orderly setting, free of distractions, without them coming individually or scattering to multiple locations. We could centralize the resources and contribute our resources, our logistics, our medical personnel. Fort Lee, Virginia is the center of excellence for Army logistics. So it was a good example of how we could use our resources to support a program that we all wanted to see continue and accelerate and help as many folks out as we could, because, you know, we value what they did for us and we want to be reciprocal in that regard.
So do we have to understand that this group was created because of the slowness of the process at the State Department?
No, that's not what I said. It is a long process. And to the extent that the addition of DoD resources and support could make it, again, about bringing them all together. If you're familiar with the process, there's multiple stages and multiple agencies involved within our system. This gave us, because of our resources, the ability to have a base with a location. We could bring that together and speed up something that may have otherwise taken weeks into a matter of days. And it became more economical. We increased the throughput of that process and create capacity to do more. So that's really the contributions of the Defense Department.
I think we need to get to the phones too a little bit. I haven't done that yet. Dan Lamothe, Washington Post.
Thank you, John. To drill down a bit on the flights out that we've seen on video, my colleagues at Defense One have reported there were in excess of 600, perhaps 640 people on a C-17 flying out. And you also took a question this morning in your first briefing and said you'd try to get back to us on it. There appeared to be 2 people that fell from that aircraft, likely to their death. Can you confirm those things? Thank you.
On that video footage that I know we've all seen of something falling off the wing, I don't have an update for you in terms of specific validity of that. We're obviously just as interested in you in learning more about what happened there. And on the first question about the C-17 with, you know, fully loaded, again, I don't have any additional information about that particular aircraft and that particular flight, but you know, we'll continue to try to dig down and see if there's more information that can be had about that. It's obviously difficult from 8,000 miles away to have perfect knowledge about everything that's going on the ground over there. But again, we're working hard to secure to keep the airport secure and keep these operations now sustained now that they're back on track. Nazira.
Thanks so much, John. As you know, I'm from Afghanistan, and I'm very upset today because Afghan women didn't expect that overnight all the Taliban came. They took off my flag. This is my flag. And they put their flag. Everybody is upset, especially women. And I forgot my question to be. What do you ask? Where is my president, former President Ghani? People expected that he bye-bye with the people, and immediately he ran away. We don't know where is he, and we don't have a president. President Biden said that President Ghani, no, he has to fight for us people. They have to do everything, and we were able to financially help them. But we don't have any president. We don't have anything. Afghan people, they don't know what to do. Women has a lot of achievement in Afghanistan. I had a lot of achievement. I left from the Taliban like 20 years ago. Now we go back to the first step again. Do you have any comment? Where is our president? Ghani, he should answer to Afghan people.
Well, I obviously can't speak for Ashraf Ghani or where he is or what his views are. I wouldn't do that. But let me say with all respect that I understand, and we all understand, the anxiety and the fear and the pain that you're feeling. It's clear and it's evident. And nobody here at the Pentagon is happy about the images that we've seen coming out in the last few days. And we're all mindful of the kind of governance that the Taliban is capable of. So, you know, heartfelt respect to what you're going through, and we understand that. A lot of us have spent time in Afghanistan. The general mentioned that everything that you're seeing in the last 48, 72 hours is personal for everybody here at the Pentagon. We too have invested greatly in Afghanistan and in the progress that women and girls have made politically, economically, socially. And we certainly do understand and we do feel the pain that you're feeling, probably not to the same extent. We're focused right now on making sure that we do the best we can for those Afghans who helped us. And to Sylvie's point, when she was talking to Gary, yes, the action group got stood up in July, but you can go back to the spring and hear the secretary himself talk about interpreters and translators and the sacred obligation that we know that we have to them. And so in this moment, on this day, now that the airport is open again, we are going to be focused on doing what we can to honor that obligation to all those who help make all that progress possible. Because by helping us, they helped us help you, and we take that very, very seriously. And again, I'm sorry for your pain. I truly, truly am, and I know that the General and Gary share that as well. Megan.
Mr. Reid has said that you guys want to make space for 22,000 Afghans, other helpers, to be able to come to the U.S. There's about 2 weeks until all troops are supposed to be off of the ground in Afghanistan. Who is going to protect that mission into September, assuming that 22,000 people are not going to get out in the next 2 weeks? And does that mean that there might be an extension of some of these security forces at the airport after that?
Well, I can't speak to the last part, but I can say that our commitment and the Secretary's task to me is to continue to do everything we can in this department to support this process. And as conditions change and opportunities change, we will do our very best to make whatever resources this department has to contribute to continued success in that regard. Understanding it could be very difficult. We don't know what's ahead, but we're going to stay in this as long as it takes, as long as we can contribute.
And I would just add, Megan, it's up to 22. That's the capacity that we're looking at these three installations. It doesn't mean that there are going to be 22,000 people that need that support. We're just trying to fill out the capacity as best we think we need right now. If we have underestimated that capacity, the Secretary is fully committed to finding additional locations and installations if we need it. And if we've overestimated, then to Barbara's excellent point, we've planned well. We want to make sure we're ready. So it's a capacity thing of up to 22. We're not being predictive that it's going to actually be 22,000.
So is that to say it's as many people who can get out in the next 2 weeks, or is there a consideration?
What I can tell you is that over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be as aggressive as we can and moving as many people as we can. And as you've heard me say, once we get the operation up and running well here, we could get conceivably up to 5,000 out a day. But that's seats on airplanes, not just military airplanes, but commercial and charter airplanes as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that there will be that demand signal on the other end. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Let me go back to the phones here. I haven't been good about this. Tara Kopp.
Thank you for doing this. We just reported on the C-17, a separate C-17 that was able to airlift 640 Afghans out, and learned that that was one of several C-17s that have that number or more aboard. So I was just wondering, how is the Pentagon or State Department tracking just how many Afghans and Americans it's helping assist depart the country? And how going forward are you able to track those people to be able to help them as they repatriate elsewhere?
So the number of 700 that I gave earlier was the number reported by Department of State and the commander on the ground. So the question, as we continue to go forward, that is one of the more important tasks that we will do, is as Department of State continues to provide names of those that will depart, the military will continue to ensure we have the aircraft, whether it's military or civilian aircraft, to get them out and continue to report forward.
David.
is a lot like Megan's question. What is the determining factor here? Is it August 31st, or is it the completion of the mission to evacuate diplomats, U.S. citizens, vulnerable Afghanis?
It's the mission is to evacuate our embassy personnel, American citizens, as well as Afghans who we can help. That's the mission set. The time frame that we're on right now is to do that, complete that mission by August 31st. And if we're at 5,000, and I've seen some estimates that go north of 5,000 a day, depending on how many sorties you can fly, and obviously that's dependent on a lot of factors, including weather, we believe that with that capacity, should air operations be able to go uninterrupted, that we can meet that goal by the end of the month. Beyond August 31st, it's just too difficult to speculate, and we wouldn't want to get ahead of decisions that haven't been made yet. Where our head is right now on getting the air operations going again, getting airplanes in with troops and getting people on those same airplanes as they head out. And then once the troop flow is done, to continue to flow in military aircraft empty to pick up people and go out. But again, our focus is on getting as much done as we can, as quickly as we can. And yes, the date, August 31st, is when the president has told us to be done this drawdown and this movement. I won't speculate about what it's going to look like beyond that.
Are there any plans for helping people get to the airport?
Right now, as I said before, our military mission, is to secure the airport, to safeguard air traffic and people and the flow at the airport. And that's what we're focused on right now. Courtney.
General Taylor, can you tell us a little bit more? Kirby said that there hadn't been any Taliban attacks, but there were a couple of security incidents earlier in the day. Were those Taliban, these armed fighters that the U.S. had?
No, we can't confirm that those were Taliban. We do know that there was some random shooting that came in during that piece, but not confirmed to be Taliban.
Have there been any other security incidents like that, and have there been any Americans wounded?
There haven't been any other major security incidents other than what we saw last night. There was a report of one U.S. Wounded, but superficial and already back to duty.
Shot? Was the individual shot?
I don't know that detail. Who was wounded?
And then can you, I'm not sure who this is for, but I'm still unclear on the numbers. So there have been 700, let's take it from August 14th until right now. Yep. There have been 700 SIV candidates. How many Americans have been moved? How many aircraft have left taking people out? Like, how many total people have been moved as part of this evacuation operation so far? Out of the country?
Yeah, so I can give you the answer for the SIV. So in the last 48, we know that we had 700 out on flights. That gives us that total of 2,000 SIVs since we began operations.
But how many Americans? I mean, haven't there been Americans moved out on the who worked at the embassy, right? And other Afghans who are not SIV candidates as well? Have there been? I'm trying to get a sense of, this has been ongoing for 48 hours, and I hate to say it, but have you only moved 700 total people in 48 hours?
Well, so first thing, just to remind everyone, the SIVs that we're talking about were on the charter flights that the State Department had chartered, and we have been running those since the 29th of July. I think Flight 10 arrived overnight last night, 265. None of them went to Fort Lee. They already had their electronic visas, and they're being processed by state. The outflow of Americans and embassy staff it's in the hundreds. I don't have an exact number for you, but just to reinforce, this is sort of available space on aircraft that are coming in configured, not ideal to just load up completely. There's equipment backhauls and other things that are occurring on these aircraft. So think of it as a space available with those aircraft going out. And as Mr. Kirby said, as soon as we get all the forces in, you will have aircraft coming in solely for ramping of these evacuations, getting up to the 20 or 30 a day, getting you up to 5,000 per day.
So, but as of now, it's still in the hundreds of people who, as part of this evacuation mission, in the hundreds that have been brought now.
Yeah, that's right. And we talked about that earlier today. We got time for just a couple more, guys. Mike?
Can you tell how the U.S. is going to keep Afghanistan from becoming another terrorist safe haven, since arguably we're in a worse position than we were pre-9/11.
We've talked about this too, Mike. I mean, we have robust over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities already in the region. We can fly from ships at sea. We can fly from bases in the region. I mean, just in terms of the support we were able to give to the Afghans, in just the airstrikes that we did in support of them, I mean, there were multiple sorties per day, and sometimes several strikes, sometimes as many as 10 to a dozen per day. So we've got the capability and the capacity, and we continue to talk. We continue to talk to partners in the region to see if we can explore additional options that are closer to Afghanistan. But you've heard the Secretary say this many times. There's not a scrap of the earth that we can't hit if we don't need to. Now, is it more difficult to do counterterrorism strikes over the horizon? You bet. Do you have to travel more distances? Yep. Could it take more time? Yes, but it's not like we haven't done this before. And if you look at other places around the world where we execute over-the-horizon counterterrorism, it is possible, it is effective, and we believe that our intelligence apparatus and the networks we have in the region now are far more mature than they were in 2001, and we believe that we can execute effective over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities going forward. Doesn't mean that we aren't going to try to improve that. We absolutely will. I got just time for one more. I'll go to Tony.
Yeah, for General Taylor, I want to go back to the question of the Afghan National Security Forces collapsed quicker than anticipated. What was anticipated? I ask you because you've been there. You said you had a deep emotional connection to the events on the ground. Roughly $83 billion has been spent. 66,000 of these brave people have been killed, according to the SIGAR. Can you give a sense broadly, why do you think they seem to have collapsed quicker than expected?
I think, as Mr. Kirby said earlier and others, is that the anticipation of the lack possibly of action by some of the Afghan leaders, I think, is one of the areas that we are continuing to look at.
When you say Afghan leaders, you're talking military or political leaders?
Military and some of the political. But really, as we look at what were the actions or lack of actions at the military level throughout the country is what we're looking at right now.
Because $83 billion, people are going to say that was wasted. I mean, what do you think? What do you respond to somebody who does not following this closely?
Yeah. I know that we will continue to look to find out and dig deep into the why we're at where we are today. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We got to get going. Appreciate it.
All right, you've been listening to the Pentagon update on the situation in Afghanistan. Joining me now, NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. Colonel Jack, questions for the Department of Defense today about why the U.S. didn't take military action, airstrikes to slow down the Taliban in some way. Could you explain for our viewers who might have similar questions what the U.S. military strategy has really been in Afghanistan in the last week, in the last 48 hours, and your take?